Alright, hello everyone, welcome to a live version of BVI Pilot's podcast. This will go on to my YouTube channel as a live stream and it will archive itself after we're done here. And we will also be recording this and putting it up on the podcast at a later date in the next few days or so probably, so that you'll be able to access it on the usual platforms as well as this. But we're doing this live so that we can get the news out to people and so that we can also have questions asked. And we'll do that at the end. So if you have questions about anything that we're talking about or any other questions related to TFM, as long as they're not too wide, we will read them at the end. I don't have the chat open at the moment, so as we don't get interrupted by the text-to-speech reading the questions, but I will read from the chat at the end. So anything that you put in, stick around until the end, and we will do that. Apologies for the delay. We were waiting for Johnny, but unfortunately he hasn't arrived. So he may arrive at some point during this next hour or so. And if he does, then he will chip in. If not, then we'll just carry on as per normal. So, as the title suggests, I am here with Andy from TFM. Hey Andy, how's it going?
Hey, that's going pretty good.
Nice. So it's been a little while since we did a podcast on TFM. I honestly can't remember where TFM was at when we last did one, but certainly it wasn't on the previews and the 737 panel build. There's several things we're going to talk about, and I know people are probably excited because there's been some talk about a new feature. We'll leave that one until the end. And well, let's get started with where TFM's gone with the previews. So we're on, I believe, week 9 this week of the 7.3 rebuild. Is that right?
Yes, this is week 9 of the 737 rebuild series, as we would call it. And in the rebuild series, we're taking TFM support for the 37 and stripping it down and building it from scratch the way it should have been. Because, honestly, in the past, people's been asking for things. And we would kind of hodgepodge it together, just throw it out there, get it out there as fast as we can get it out there so people can use it. But it was, there were things left out, things that should have been in there. And so the series focuses on putting everything in there that is physically possible to put in there, along with some things that are not in the SDK for this 37, like the new ILS feature that we'll probably get to in a while. So that is what we are doing so far. And week 9, things have been going good. We have, at count, I think it was like around 15 panels that are finished. And we're almost done with the overhead. We have the not the anti-ice, we did that last week. The air systems and the bottom segment of the overhead, and the overhead will be complete.
Right, awesome. I tell you what we'll do. So, in terms of the panels, there's been a lot of panels, and people can check out the YouTube channel and the blog to read in detail all these panels. Is that right? But I'll tell you what we'll do. Could you maybe tell us a couple of your favorite panels that you've worked on and that you think yeah, this is really really useful that people could get excited about?
I think the first one that I know some people have been getting really excited about because it dives into a few new things that we have not had access to before, and that is anti-ice. And The two exciting things about the anti-ice, well, there's a few things. One is the wing anti-ice switch. For some reason, first officer doesn't seem to turn it on when he's supposed to, and in the past, if he did turn it on, TFM would never announce it. That is fully supported, and two other things on that particular panel is the air supply, uh, air coolings for the supply to the avionics and electronics in the cockpit. The other one is the cooling exhaust. So that gives a glimpse into other types of air systems which are supposed to be coming in the next week or so. I would say the other exciting, interesting one um, is the oxygen panel because it introduces the concept of reading needles or gauges, and it has an oxygen needle uh, on that particular panel that reads a percentage, and that will read the oxygen percentage level that's currently in the cabin. Usually it'll be at 67%, but it can float up and down depending on the usage and if you have damages or service failures turned on. Um, as far as everything, I would say all of them are kind of exciting. Um, Even some of the ones that we had redone are pretty exciting because it has new things in there, like all of the indicators are on the panels. We were toying around with the idea of putting them in a list or how we should put them in, but we put them in as hotkeys, and you can always tab around to them. The preview videos on the blog will demonstrate how to do that. So I think for most people it's the fact that new things are coming out, it's a new layout. We're taking time to push these things out to people and as fast as possible.
Yeah, so and I think the weekly updates have been really useful, and seeing it move along in real time is very cool. Why don't you quickly talk about timelines? So I know this is on the blog, but obviously you're going to want to move on to other aircraft after this. But how long are we expecting these rebuilds to take?
So I had laid out in a blog post timelines for the 37, 77, and 47. So the 37 I have slated to the end of summer of 2022, so that will be September 22. The 77 I have set for towards the end of March of 2023. Yeah, 2023, and then the 47 will take a little bit more time, so I have that set for September of 2023. Given some of that could give or take some of the time, a little bit more or a little bit less than what was predicted, but those are just estimates at this time.
Right, right. And so the goal of this is to have people be able, if they want to fly without first officer. Would that be correct? Or any first officer
Yeah,
add-on?
the goal is to, yeah, well, there's two goals. One, to give as much accessibility as possible, and
Hmm.
two, so people can dump the third-party add-ons if they so want to, like first officer, and be able to do it all themselves. 'Cause there are some people who want to do it all by themselves. There are some people that say they want a first officer regardless of how accessible or inaccessible things are, which, TFM is set to support as many types of beliefs as possible.
Right, right, absolutely. And Do you think that the 747 and 777 will be more complex than the 737?
Well, it depends. Start off with the 47.
Hmm.
That's going to be more complicated regardless of
Right.
which way you do it. Uh, the 77 is going to be a little more complex in some senses because there's more instruments, more gauges, um, not as many panels. Things on some of the panels are more simplified than in the 37. Uh, so yeah, I would say as far as the 37 and the 77, they're probably comparable to each other. But the 47 is going to be like doing the 37 and the 77 all at the same time.
Okay, right. And the sort of redesign of some of these 7.3 panels, it's a slightly different layout people are going to have to get used to, because I mean, I know that certain things were put for ease of use. For example, in the electrical panel, certain things that might actually not be on that panel in the real aircraft were put just on there for ease of use. So I guess there's going to be some change that people have to get used to.
Yeah, in certain cases, people may have to get used to some change. A good example would be in the 77. In order to get the engines running, not only do you have to flip the engine start switches to start, but you also have to go over to the electrical panel and hit the run switches to run. We only have a certain amount of time to do that before the engine start switches switch back to off. So what we're going to do in the 77 rebuild is we're going to put those run switches next to the engine switches, so it'll be easy just to tab over to them, flip them, and there you go. On the 37, I don't see as much of a need for that at this point. There may be later on.
Right, okay, good to know. And let me just turn you up a little bit. I had a message saying that you were a little bit quiet, so I'll just whack that volume up a little bit. Okay, so people know where they can go and read about that. And you know, if you're really interested in a certain panel, you know, there's in-depth info. Um, we'll come back to checklists and things a little bit later because that's kind of related to one of the new things. But obviously, there's you know there's been other stuff going on during these weeks, not just the 737. Tell us a bit about the new ILS system with right bracket control D that you can access.
Yeah, so the new ILS system. Uh, so for people who aren't used to the way it currently works, when the aircraft picks up the ILS and the glide slope, it will start reading out percentages. So you may hear something like 18% left, 15% left, or 99% down, 89% down. In a lot of cases, it's not very useful because what does 88% down mean in a glide slope, or what does 15% left or 80% right mean in terms of a localizer heading beacon? So what we did is we turned those percentages into headings in the localizer and altitudes in the glide slope. So if you have this turned on in settings, then the localizer may tell you 50 degrees to the left or 32 degrees to the right, which basically means that you turn your aircraft either 50 degrees to the left or 32 degrees to the right, and it's more precise. In terms of the altitude and the glide slope, it may say something like 2,000 feet down or 1,000 up. So on the 1,000 up means you have to increase your altitude by 1,000 feet in order to meet that glide slope. In the case of 2,000 feet down, means you have to drop 2,000 feet in order to find the glide slope's target ideal altitude. And we just find that it helps. For the time that it's been in practice, it's increased people's landing rates from an already high 90% to a yet higher 98%. Whereas before, with the percentages, people's landing rate was somewhere between 60, maybe 75%.
Yeah, I know it's been useful
Um,
on VATSIM for sure. When you get, this info from the
yeah,
controller, and you used to hear 99% left or whatever, and it wasn't, you couldn't translate it, but now you can even make adjustments and follow it in yourself if you need to, and you can for sure do a manual landing. That's very tricky, but it is doable.
yeah, and so the way this ILS system works is under the aircraft tab of the settings, there's two check boxes. One is read localizer heading, the other one is read glide slope altitude. If those are checked, then TFM will read out the altitudes and the headings that you need to follow. The other part of this is right bracket control D, where you fill out the form. It asks you to type in an ICAO code for your airport you're going to. And you press enter, it loads all the ILS runways. Choose the one that you've been assigned to, press the OK button. That lets TFM be able to track where you're headed to. And you can do that anytime on descent, on cruise. You do it before you leave your airport. As long as you know the landing spot, then you can tell TFM what it is. And the added benefit to that too is it will give you the frequency, it'll give you the slope in degrees for the glide slope. It will also give you the ILS bearing of 52 degrees, so you can put it in your course 1 and course 2, or just keep it in mind.
Yeah, and the good thing is that, of course, comes from your P3D data. So sometimes you might experience it where the PMDG tunes a frequency, but your P3D has a different frequency for the ILS. That can happen if you're using, old scenery or something, and the PMDG is tuning it from the current AIRAC. Can be a discrepancy. So TFM is a good place to check out what your simulator has, and that's by locating your P3D database, right?
Yeah, so another new addition to TFM is a settings category called databases. And in there, there is a browse button. You can locate your P3D or FSX uh, make runways database, and it will be able to pick that up, and that's where it gets all of its information from. There is a note that the location of this database is mandatory for TFM to work. If you don't do it, you're going to get some awkward results, like you might not get times predicted the right way, especially in freeware. You might not get any waypoints. When you do right bracket W, your fuel readouts may be screwed up. And so we just recommend that the first time you get TFM with this new ILS feature, that you go in and tell it where your database is located.
Right, yeah. And a reminder to anyone watching, if you have a question, make sure you put it in during the stream, just so that when we come to live questions, we're not sat here waiting for 10 minutes while everyone thinks of their questions. So if you can put it in ahead of time, that will be much appreciated. Because I can see there's nothing in there at the moment. Maybe people just don't have any questions, which is always good. It means we're explaining it well. But make sure to put it in if you do. Okay, so ILS system, and I know what a question that people will ask is, how easy is this going to be to translate something like this into non-ILS runways?
And so it shouldn't be too difficult. Oh, there's John. Um, so it shouldn't be too difficult to translate to the non-ILS systems. People that are on the BVI pilots WhatsApp group and some people on the mailing list um, already know that I had attempted this, and that is a manual flight in the 47 on a 300-mile flight with nothing more than the localizer portion of this new ILS system telling me what to do and where to go. The landing was a little rough, but I did hit the runway, I think, once on a bounce. But, you know, uh, manual landings is going to be something to practice for a long time before we get it right.
Oh, it's tough.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so to translate it in, I'd give it a couple of weeks for implementation and some proven testing before it will come out. That's not to say that I'm going to be working on it now. So when there's some things that I need to do the current ILS system that I had pushed out. So when I come back to that, then I will most likely be working on the non-ILS based runways.
Okay, good to know. So it's not going to be too tricky, and yeah, manual landings are difficult. All right, guys, let me just bring Johnny in. So excuse the use of the screen reader here, because obviously he is the other co-host. So we're just going to move him in to our channel. There we go. And I'm not sure how his volume is going to be, so not too bad. All right, hey John. Hey John.
Hey, sorry about that, guys. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
you're
good.
alright.
So we're just in the middle of it, but I let him know that you're gonna chip in when you arrive. So
Oh yeah, I mean Andy's he's the power guy,
yeah,
right? He's the one that got all the info. So
right,
I'm
right.
here to listen mainly.
Let me turn John up a little bit.
There we go, guys. I'm just getting ourselves reset. So
Alright.
yeah, reminder, keep putting questions in. Okay, so was there anything else you wanted to say about the ILS, Andy? Are we done on that one?
The thing about the ILS system that I want to remind people about at this point is when you do right bracket control D, it only brings up ILS defined runways. That means it has to have a localizer and a glide slope attached.
Yeah.
In the future, there will be localizer only and non-ILS based runways that will be included. I think the route that we're going to take is have the ILS based runways, then move to localizer only, then RNAV, then just plain VFR landing runways.
I mean the thing about the ILS anyways is once if it's just a localizer and you've got to do the glide slope yourself, um, I've found that manageable anyways. Just as long as you get the localizer that keeps you lined up, I think that's the really important part. Wouldn't you say, Declan? I mean, you can kind of control that descent.
Yeah, it's very useful
Um,
for picking up the loc and the glide.
Yeah.
I think as far as the non-localizer, like the VFR only runways, the two parts that are needed is how far away you are from the foot of the runway and what is your current heading according to the runway's
Right. Yeah.
runway heading. So there'd be two parts of that: knowing how far you are away from the foot of the runway and what your heading currently is. And once you have those two, then as a pilot, you can figure out what kind of descent rate you would need to have to hit the foot of the runway
Right.
at a good spot. But
Yeah.
that's going to be practice.
Because we
Pretty much
can't
like
give them vertical
RNAVs.
guidance. You kind of have to, yeah, exactly. It's like an RNAV. You can follow. Well, if you have an RNAV approach, you can follow the altitudes on the RNAV, but at some point you're going to take over manually, and you're going to head down to the runway after the last specified waypoint. And normally these
Yeah.
things have a 3-degree glide slope, which is about 700 or 800 feet a minute. That's what That's what you want to aim for, give or take. But we can't give people got to understand we can't give vertical guidance because there is no glide slope. So it's kind of your best
Right.
judgment.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and they go by what we've done enough ILS now to where we should have a general idea, a good idea of where that should be. Like you said, a good descent is 700 feet a minute, even 720, 730. You know, it's the general, usually what you see on a descent.
Yeah. Okay, so before we move on to for John's benefit, we've talked about the previews, and remind people you can download. I tell you what, we didn't talk about this, so we talked about the panels, but the ILS feature I believe is in the previews, right, Andy, or is that in the official build as of yet?
It's in the official build.
It's in
It's
the
in the
official.
previews as well, but it is also in
Right.
the official build.
Yeah, it's in both. Yep.
But the previews are downloadable whenever there's a big change, right?
Oh yeah, so the way previews are released is at this point, when we get done with the major panel section, we'll have a new release. So generally, the first one was after the aft and the forward overhead. And the next one is going to be once the center overhead and the bottom portion of the overhead are finished. And a few things are cleaned up, so we're looking at maybe a week or two.
Okay. And so you don't need anything special to download those previews. You can just, are they installers or are they separate TFM folders? Or are they going to
No,
install
it's
over
an
the top?
installer. And it's an installer, so
Right.
you can go to talkingflightmonitor.com/preview-releases.
Mm-hmm.
Download that installer, install it like you normally would TFM, and your official build and the preview build can sit side by side. So if you want to check out the new things, but you want to rely on your official copy, then that's good. If you want to rely on the preview builds, and when it comes to a point where you can't use it anymore because there's a feature not available or a feature is messed up, then you can revert back to the preview build. And they are switchable on the go. So if you're in the middle of a flight, say you're at cruise, and it's like, well, I'm coming up on descent and I don't want to screw anything up, so I'm going to revert back to the official build. You can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we should stress that. So don't use the preview builds for a full flight on VATSIM or something and then come and say this feature wasn't available. It messed up my flight. That's not how these are supposed to work. And if you want to do that, then so be it. Feel free, but that's kind of at your own risk, I would imagine.
Use that.
And it's important that
use at your own risk.
Exactly, because here's the thing, and we've said it before. Well, Declan, even we've said it, and even earlier than this. If it's a preview build, though, something that's not been fully added into like one of the updates, there's no support behind that because it's not guaranteed that it's going to work 100%. Not that it won't work, but you don't want to send Andy, 20 messages, oh man, this didn't work, it didn't work. Well, you've been kind of warned about that to, go back. It's just common sense when you're flying. That like I said, we talked about before on flying that there's a lot of things you got to pay attention to as a pilot, and if that's going to affect you being able to pay attention to what you normally would, then don't use it. Go back to what you was using before. Because
Yeah.
we can't do nothing about what your landing is, whatever. So
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So if they find a bug with a preview, what is the procedure? Would you like them to report it? Would you like them to tag it as a preview bug?
So it doesn't make any difference if it's a preview bug. It'd be nice to know if it's in the preview build and what preview build it is in. So to do that, while TFM is running, you can press right bracket Control Shift I. That's right bracket Control Shift I, and it will take you to the GitHub issue queue for TFM. You can look through there to see if there's anything similar to the one that you want to report. If there is, we highly recommend putting a comment in the existing report. If there's nothing similar to what you're trying to report or whatever feature you're trying to request, then go ahead and make a new report. Put it in there. When you do put it in there, make sure that you put into the report what version number you're using, whether it's preview build or whether it's the official build, because it'll help sort things out.
yeah. And you can, I've even done where I've recorded before. If I was going to submit a bug, you can even record if you need to. Those things help out the developers. If you can kind of show them where exactly is the problem. It's easy to just say it, but if you can show it, that makes a big difference too, because then they can say, well, that's not TFM, or it is, or, so.
Yeah, see, I've had people, a couple of things about recording videos or audio. The first thing is I've had people try to explain it to me and it sounds like a bug. I asked them for a short little video clip and they'll give me a video clip and it's not a bug. They missed a little step they didn't think about reporting and their problem is fixed. And the next thing about recording videos, unless the bug itself requires more than 5 minutes of video time, I don't need your whole flight.
Right.
I don't need the whole descent. I don't need first officer's pre-flight flow, unless there's a problem that goes on off and on throughout that whole pre-flight flow.
Take 2 minutes before the bug and 2 minutes after, and make that or even a minute.
Yep.
Which is kind of harder to do, but just round it up. Don't do a hour video for a 1 minute bug.
If you can reproduce the problem, then it's good if you send a video along with it if we ask for one. Now if it's difficult to reproduce, it's good to know too.
Well, let me just add too. You've already.
Yeah.
I don't know what you've talked about. Have you talked about the newest thing?
No, yeah, we're saving that to the end.
No, not yet. No.
Okay.
No, that's the end because that's going to be more extensive.
Okay. Well, then I'm not going to say what I was going to say.
But it'll tie in. They'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll tie in later.
It'll tie in. You can use what they're going to talk about later. That'll help them with the bug, with figuring out what the bug is. So.
Right.
Right, so before we get on to the new feature, let's just clear up the Navigraph thing. So, would it be correct in saying that TFM is applying to the Navigraph public API?
Yes, we have applied to the public API.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why, and I'll try and make this as short as I can, the reason why is at some point FMS Data Manager is going to go away. This is the Navigraph updater that updates P3D add-ons with the Navigraph database. They're looking at merging it into FS 2020 Data Center, which is the Navigraph manager for FS 2020 and all of its add-ons.
Mm-hmm.
So what they've done is to minimize the work that they have. They have told anyone who has an out-of-process add-on requesting new access to apply for the Navigraph API, and those who are in process to the SIM to continue applying as they did before, and that's for access to the updater. An in-process add-on are things like ATC add-ons or GSX. You know, if it's integrated into the simulator and you have to interact with the simulator itself to get any experience out of the add-on, then it's an in-process add-on. If it is manageable from its own user interface, like First Officer or Active Sky, TFM, then they're asking you to apply for the public API because their thought on this is anything that is an out-of-process API, out-of-process add-on should be able to manage its own Navigraph databases. So when we're approved, what it will look like is there will be an option to download the newest cycle. If you have not done this with TFM before, it will pop up a Navigraph sign-in screen. You put in your username and password. It'll ask if you give TFM permission to access your account information, mainly your name and your subscription info, so it can download the databases. If you approve it, and TFM will just continue downloading the Navigraph databases when they're available. And note that according to their terms of use, we cannot automatically update the cycle. You'll have to manually check for it and download it when they give you the notifications that there's a new cycle. And that's basically, in a simple sense, how it will work.
Okay. So to confirm to people, this is just because I think there's been some confusion. This is just TFM getting updated. It's not that TFM is going to update other add-ons. The other add-ons will either have to go through a similar process or through the new through the 2020 data manager. But TFM itself can get updated by you checking eventually and then doing through this API.
Yeah, it's only for TFM.
Right.
TFM is
Yeah.
not going to manage any other add-ons except itself.
Right.
Yeah, right. And the uses for this data will be the same as before. That, you know, in the end, hopefully, TFM will have some kind of database explorer for procedures and things like that.
Yeah, there is hope that TFM will have something similar to what ProATC has, where you can go look at all of the SIDS and stars and waypoints and what their altitude restrictions are. What is a SID going to look like when you take off? What's a star or an approach going to look like when you land? So when we get that, then we can hopefully start working on putting those things into place.
Okay. Do they give any estimate for that, or is it just waiting?
Nah, they don't give any estimate. It's just waiting. What they did tell me was if we choose a custom format that's not known to the wide world universe of file formats, then it will take them months, if not a couple of years, to build it. If it's a standard format that they already know about, which we've requested a standard format they already know about, it could cut the time down to anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay, keep putting questions in chat, people. I've seen a few, so just keep putting them in, and we'll go through them at the end to make things easier. So that leaves us with the new feature. So I'll let you go into some generalized details, Andy, and then we'll talk about the possible uses, because I know there's a lot of uses for this. So there you go. Unveil
Sky's
the new
limit,
feature.
but
Yeah.
yeah, so uh, this week in week 9 has deviated away from redoing the 737 panels to adding database support. And this is not Navigraph support, it is TFM's own custom database. And it's starting off simple, and that is with speech history, where TFM, if you do tell it to use database support, then it will keep an infinite number of speech events forever and ever and ever across restarts. It'll just keep piling up unless you clear them out every now and again. And we can extend it from there, add little bits and pieces. Sky's the limit. It could go on to a whole bunch of different things. If people want an in-depth review of this, BVI Pilot's YouTube channel has a week 9 sneak peek preview video. It's about 75 minutes long that covers just about anything and everything about it that you would want to know. We can cover some of that stuff here.
Yeah. So, I mean, people will be familiar with the current speech history where it will clear itself, of course, when you restart, and it will hold, is it 100, I believe? There's a certain amount of events it will hold.
Yeah, it holds a maximum of 100.
Right. So it's useful
entries.
enough in the moment, but if you have to do a restart, that data's gone. And this new one has obviously the ability to save in your own personal database, and it has timestamps, right, for the events.
Yes, it has the ability to add timestamps to the output in the list.
Yeah, you can check it.
And it's all in. Yeah, there's in output settings in TFM. If you check the box that says save output to database, then another option appears, and it is include timestamps in speech history. So if you check that box and do some things in TFM to generate speech output, and then you go back to the speech history window, it will have something in there like parking brake on, and it'll give you a timestamp.
Right.
And like Andy was explaining, we did our live stream last night. So we're real good at doing 2 or 3 things at the same time. So we're always typing, always doing stuff, and we'll miss stuff. We'll miss something that TFM has reported. We didn't hear it. Not that it didn't come through. We just didn't hear it because we interrupted it with, as everybody knows, the screen reader. The speech interrupt. You hit a key and it interrupts it. Now you can narrow that down, and you can look at, if you want to know exactly what happens before takeoff, what is first officer doing. Well, now you can go and look at every little thing that he clicks. You can see that.
Yeah, and I can tell you there's a lot of events. Go ahead.
Yeah, the hope is that in the speech history window there are plans for future features like being able to tag any of those speech output entries with a annotation or a note. So in stream last night we were talking about letting first officer come in, do his pre-flight flow and stuff. And when he starts, because it'll start with door opened and it will stop with no more speech output. So The idea is that you could go back through from door open and him saying good afternoon or good morning to the end of his flow. You could tag notes to it like
Mhm.
pre-flight first officer. And then once you are in flight, say you're in cruise, and you could go write down all of these things that first officer done during his pre-flight, before start flow, taxi, all the way up to cruise. And you could write them down in your own checklist and flows that you can do. So you can have like a notepad open or whatever you want to put it in.
Yeah.
And you could go through all of the TFM panels, flip the switches, do the things that he would normally do, and you have it spot on according to what he wants you to do.
Yeah.
And then once you're done, just wipe out your speech history and start over.
Like I was telling them last night, Declan, telling Andy and those that might be listening. Now with with multi-crew, how you can customize multi-crew to do things. You can do your own flows with multi-crew. Well, if you wanted to try that out, now you've got a way to narrow down what is happening with from door opening up until we do our pre-flight checklist. What is happening with from pushback to the takeoff? What is happening from takeoff to cruise? And what is happening from descent to wheels down? So I think it opens doors. And Declan, I think he's going to make a good point on events. People run into situations. I think it's where he's going with that. And now they can narrow that down. What the problem is, instead of having so many problems and not knowing what happened.
Yeah. There's a lot of events, and with 100 entries, you're gonna lose a lot of that very quickly during the pre-flight or during the approach. So if you want to look back and see what happened, maybe you had an approach that botched up. Maybe there's something didn't seem right on the landing. You want to see exactly what TFM was reporting. And we should point out only things through the speech output, but anything that comes through the speech output will go in the speech log, and you can go back and double check.
Because a lot of times we don't think something went through a speech output, and it did. We just had hit a key that interrupted that speech, or because you got sounds and everything else happening at the same time. So, I mean, I'm guilty of it myself, saying, "Oh man, TFM messed up there." No, it was me because I hit a key and didn't hear what TFM said.
Yeah, you had one thing last night in the video where you were letting first officer do its pre-flight setup so he could show what it looked like, and you were doing something, didn't catch what it had said, but an FMC message had popped up.
Yeah.
And said current and origin IRS positions disagree.
Yeah, and see, I didn't even catch it, and we were going back and looking at history, and I'm like, oh, good thing I saw that, because I was doing a flight after that video, live stream. So, me knowing that, I knew that, that will cause a problem. Once you get on the runway, go take off, you're going to have something complaining. And I wouldn't have known it otherwise. I mean, I'd have known there's a problem, but I wouldn't know what it was. Question, though, on this. The chat is 100 lines. That's a limit, correct? Is that the same thing with this database? Is there a limit, 100 lines, and then you got to...
No, it's unlimited. So when you did your pre-flight in the video last night, one of the new features to this speech history window is when you press Alt-L or the clear button, it will report to you how many items were removed. And you had like over 350 items just
for the pre-flight, yeah.
Right. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, so no, it's not. It's not limited to a particular number. It is infinite, forever and ever and ever.
Running just for shutdown, not even the jet running, just battery on, giving you power. Over 60 different things that it does for the cold and dark shutdown. I'm like, Wow.
Yeah, and that's reporting lights and all that kind of stuff. But there were 60 something different speech events just shutting it off from a short.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
So
So
it's easy to lose something pretty quick.
Yeah.
yeah, a good question might be: is there ever going to be? I know you talked about tagging. Perhaps is there ever going to be a search filter where you could search for, speed brake or flaps or something if you're not sure what happened?
That's a great idea.
Um, yeah, I think that we had mentioned it on the stream last night that some of the features that would be coming up at some point for the speech history and the database in general is the ability to add notes to certain things, be able to filter things out or search for things in the database.
Hmm.
So like if you're looking for all instances of the speed brake during a particular flight or all instances of a speed brake between these two time frames, then you would be able to get it.
Hmm. Right, and yeah, that'll be useful. So, a really good extended speech history feature that's really useful for diagnosing problems, and probably will be useful for you as well. And if someone has a bug, you can because you can copy lines to the clipboard, right? So you can send them to someone else.
You can.
Mm.
Yeah, you can. So there is a read-only edit. If you're in the list and you press tab, there's a read-only edit that has the current highlighted item in that. You can just select all and paste it anywhere you want. There is also a copy to clipboard button for those who don't want to use or can't use the text field. At some point, there will be the ability to copy the entire log to the clipboard, so you can just paste it somewhere and send it off or save it or whatever. And it helps in debugging because a lot of times I might ask somebody, they're like, oh, well, for whatever reason I can't move. And this is a common thing, I've run into this myself. It comes to pushback and you use first officer for whatever reason, and the plane's not moving. While you were setting up the FMC, he was doing other things. What did the speech out? What were the last couple of things that TFM announced to you? I don't know. I don't have them anymore. I never thought to look there. Well, okay. Now, what were the last couple of things that TFM said to you before pushback failed? And then you could go back through there, say, oh, well, my flight was at like 9 o'clock. So I'm going to go back through and give you the last 5 minutes worth of speech events.
Yeah.
And it comes in handy because if you accidentally pressed parking brake, and since you were doing things on top of that and TFM never physically or audibly announced it to you, it's still going to put it in the speech history. And so, well, there's your problem right there. You accidentally put the speed brake or put the parking brake on, or once we get to this point with the API support for the 37, oh well, first officer didn't remove the chocks for some reason. Maybe you called them back and he just skipped over it for some weird reason. I've had that happen a time or two.
Yeah, it's a great feature, and that's why I almost said something earlier before you even had brought up the new latest thing. I'm like, yeah, it's a good way to do support because now you can really narrow down where the problem lies. You can go right before it and right after it. Well, right there in between the two, there's your problem, and you can find it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, even in BVI,
And
when we've been training people, you'll say send a video of your landing, and they'll send a 40-minute video of them doing their full landing, and you have to sit through and watch the video and try and tell them, what did you do wrong? You turned approach mode on at the wrong time, or you didn't put your flaps out, early enough, or whatever. But so the fact that it'll be very nice when we have this feature, and the extra filters, and we can say, okay, send me between these times or send me your approach log. You can copy a section of the log to the clipboard, and we can go through it and read it. So yeah, it's a really good troubleshooting feature, I think, especially when you're trying to look at things that maybe people missed.
And I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of
Yeah,
work
and
involved, but when a real pilot's in the sim, they have a lot of work involved as well. So it's no different. We need to be able to expect to be busy, expect to do different things when necessary. It's not just going to be a just jump in and go and land and never have a problem. You know.
mm-mm. This extends out to other things. Right now, it's just the speech history window.
Yeah, let's get into
Start
that.
out simple. Give it starts out simple, gives people the feature like almost immediately. We can get feedback on it, feature requests for it, and expand on it. So the database thing is good for more than just the speech history window. It could be anything, like I said earlier, the sky is the limit. You could, at some point, we could build a thing to have TFM track your landing rates, and it could save it in the database. Or when freeware stuff gets done, who's to say that you couldn't build the custom flight plan inside of TFM and have it saved to the database? So you have your custom built flight plans in TFM. You could just load them back up again, export them to a PLN file whenever you need add-ons to support you in your flight outside of TFM. Could track weather conditions and save them during certain times, or you could take snapshots of certain things. Well, I need that weather, so I'm going to save it to the database or whatever. The sky's the limit. Your collective minds are the limit to what the database can or cannot do. And it's only limited when people don't say something about it or request features.
Yeah, so put in those ideas. It's your own personal database file on your drive, so it's a good way to keep data. I mean, me personally, I like the sound of a logbook kind of thing. We all use Toolkit Pro and FS Airlines sometimes, and all these different tracking softwares. But at the end of the day, we all got to use TFM to do flights. Pretty much TFM is the one bit of software that is always going to be open when you're doing a flight, regardless of whether it's FS Airlines, whether it's with a virtual airline or somewhere else, or you're just free flying around. So if TFM could do, a kind of logbook thing, you'd have all your flights saved no matter what. So that's a very cool idea, but it's just one idea. There's loads of things you could do, loads of data.
Landing rates and
Yep.
stuff like that. You
Mhm.
landing rates.
Yep. Keep track of landing rates, flights, flight plans, speech output. If TFM currently does it, the bad database can handle it. Any future features, TFM can handle it. I was talking to someone earlier today about panel states. You have Ideal Flight that creates bajillions of these panel states, and FS Airlines can do it, and FSU IPC can possibly do it if you set it up that way. Sim Toolkit Pro might keep track of the last panel state that you had. Well, if you get rid of a lot of these things, turn them off or whatever, it still saves on having thousands of generated panel states and not knowing what they're for or why they're there. But if you say set up your own panel states in TFM and save the current states to the database, and then once you got into your airplane and you said, I want to load this panel state, so who's to say you couldn't just load the panel state? TFM would go through, set all your switches, all your gauges, dials, get you all ready to rock, and there you go. All you have to do is before start flow, push back, engine start, taxi, pop out to the runway, and off you go. Just some ideas, and We need people to totally flood us with ideas on what this database would be good for.
Right, yeah, that will make sense. Okay, so is there anything else anyone wants to say about the database? And then I'll get to a couple of these questions. We only got a few, so it won't take too long.
Yeah. I can't think of anything at this point.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I just, to remind people, this is also a new feature, and I think with time and patience, I think we'll see some good things with this. So
Yeah.
I like it.
Oh, there is one. Yeah, there is something I did want to mention about this database. So this database has no extra third-party software requirements. It does not require you to buy a database or software. It does not require you to be online to use it. Everything you need to have this thing work and run is already included in TFM. It's self-managing, self-regenerating. So for an example, one of the things we talked about on the stream last night, if you track things by the year, so 2022, and it's the last day of the year, you want to close that database out, start with a new one for 2023. All you have to do is rename the database file, which has its own location. We can get to that in a minute, but you could rename the file, start TFM, it will regenerate a new one, and that's all you gotta do.
Right.
If you don't
Yeah.
want to use it anymore, just turn it off, turn TFM off, delete the file, and you're good. So the location that TFM stores this database will be your documents folder, and talking flight monitor, then data, and inside that data folder will be a file called tfm.db, and that will be the database file.
Right. Yeah. And so it's purely a file. You can do what you want with it. You can even copy it and send it to someone else, and they can put yours in, and back up theirs and take. Okay. Whoops. We just had a brief headset issue. You still got me?
Yeah, you're
Just
here.
stop mid-sentence.
Yeah, you're here.
What was I saying? But yeah, you could do what you will with it. So it's just a file. Obviously, you're not going to open the file itself. I should add, it's you don't the file is just there to be opened inside of TFM, and it'll grow. Is this speech feature going to be the speech history feature? Is that going to be available in the next preview or the next official build? When do we think that's going to be usable? Or is it out there right now?
It should be available in the next preview.
The next
Yeah,
preview.
No, it's
Okay.
not out there right now.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be in the next preview. I think it's solid enough at this point to push it to a preview.
Okay, and anyone can turn this feature on or off. So if you don't want it for whatever reason, and I don't know why you wouldn't, because the database file, I mean, it's not going to get particularly big, right? I mean, even if you're running this for quite a while without regenerating a new one, it's only a database file, so it's not like it's going to take up gigabytes of space.
No.
Yeah.
Maybe if you've ran it. If you've ran it for maybe a year, considering any new features that come into play with it, you might hit 50 or 60 megs by the end of the year.
Right.
Because all it's storing in it is text.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can turn it off if you really want to, and it'll use the old speech system for now, right? But that's still there if people really wanted it.
Yeah, so if you don't want to use the database anymore, then TFM will just revert to what it does, what it did without the database.
Yeah, you just
And
uncheck
you
that
can
box.
find, yeah, you can find the setting under Output, under TFM settings.
I would say, again, like Andy had said earlier, if you guys really want to, see every little detail about it, we did a good, you know, review on that live stream last night. And matter of fact, Andy was
Yep.
excited about Declan finding out today. He's like, man, he gonna find out tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm like if Declan finds out on this on the podcast, he's gonna be crying like a little baby on joy because there's a uh, he
well,
has a there's a way to keep everything that you actually do.
I'm gonna
Oh, that
speak
would have
for
been funny.
Declan and myself on this because there's a lot of times that we deal with situations with other people when we're trying to help them, but we can't because we don't know what they've done. We don't know, and we'll ask, well, what happened here, and we still don't get the answer that we need. Now we can really help somebody because we can tell them, okay, do the flight again, and I want you to copy the log from when you bring your tires up off the ground until you land, or give me the log of landing or whatever. We can specify exactly where we want information gotten from. So
All right. So in terms of questions, we got one question which was about, I think, the ILS system when we were talking about that. That said, so do we need to set up the waypoints ourselves manually for landing, or will TFM do that? So it's not really about waypoints. It's the ILS is more about giving indications straight from the glide slope and localizer, and TFM just reading what it's getting from the sim. So you still have to fly your approach as normal. You still got to put the waypoints in and associate a star and approach. But it's just a new way that when you activate approach mode, um, you will get better info on the ILS instead of just percentages like 30% left or whatever, and you think, well, what does that mean? How many degrees is that in practice? um, well, now you can find that out, but you still need the waypoints in the FMC.
Yeah, so TFM doesn't deal with the waypoints. Your flight plan does. All TFM is doing is telling you how to descend and what heading to fly in order to match up with the runway. But you still have to fly your flight plan. You still have to fly your approach according to what the FMC tells you.
yeah, like Declan said, it doesn't change anything about your flight. Your flight will be the same every. You'll always have to do that stuff. No matter. I'm expecting a lot of features, even in the future, stuff gets added. We'll always have to, you know, manage our flight. I mean, because we are the ones flying it. So
Yeah, it's just to make it easier, and it's the same with when we get other runways that are non-ILS. You'll still have to normally still have to put an approach in. So you might, let's say you've got an RNAV approach. You usually follow the RNAV, until the last waypoint, which is, it can be anywhere. It could be, it might be 1,000 feet, and then you're supposed to just, take the plane down to the runway, and then, you just sort of follow TFM's guidance and use your best judgment. Those types of runways are just not going to be able to give the same kinds of info, same level of detail. But that's the same in real life. There's not as much vertical guidance as an ILS that can take you right down to the runway. We got some questions here about timelines. I think we've pretty much we talked about all that with regard to the PMDGs that the hopefully by what was it, September 23, the final one will be finished, but obviously that can change.
Yeah,
Right.
and I had a question last night, and I didn't answer it there, but maybe the person's here today. They were asking about the, when landing. Um, we had talked about this before. I can't remember which video it was. Me and Andy talked about at some point, which I don't know if the preview has the three landing lights yet or not that tells you that it's auto land. For auto land is ready, go ahead and activate, command B, because evidently, this person said I did an auto land the other day, and as soon as I activated command B, command A went off. I'm not sure because I didn't do anything different than I've always done before. Is there a certain point or time when I'm supposed to activate command B? And so, well, you get the idea of the question. There are lights. Matter of fact, Annie, if you remember the one time TFM reported it, and I don't remember what made it do it. Remember it said auto land enabled or something.
Yeah, you were doing. Yeah, you were landing, and it said auto land, and plane. You turned on command B, and the plane just took over, and you just sat back and watched.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean it was beautiful.
yeah, so there are lights that indicate when auto land is available, um, and when it's not available. So you have, it's a light called A3, A2, and A1. And what it does is it indicates to you what type of approach do you have. Is it a category 3, 2, or 1? And generally with 1, category 1, you cannot use auto land. I mean, sometimes you might be able to fluke it into thinking you could do it and it'll work, but generally it won't. Category 2, auto land is available, but only certain portions of auto land. So when category 2, when you're on a category 2 approach, if you manage to get the sequence right, you'll have an auto land light come on, but you'll also have a flare light come on. And when the flare light turns on, it means that you should flare your airplane. And at that point, autopilot will turn off and the throttles will kick back. You flare your plane and you should be good to go for the most part. And a full auto land, once the auto light comes on and you press command B, then your plane will flare for you. It will turn off auto throttle for you. It will do everything until all the wheels touch the ground, and then it'll hand it back to you.
I mean, generally when you hear it say approach off and it's turning other things off, at that point you're usually good to go ahead and activate your command B.
Yeah, you can, but at this point it's a guess. But when TFM has finished supporting those areas, then you'll know for
You'll
sure.
see the lights. Yeah, you'll see
Because
the
if
lights.
auto land if auto land is available, then it will say something like that, auto land available or whatever.
Yeah, I still don't know how that happened, you guys. So I don't know what made it even tell me that day, but it did. Like I was trying to convince myself that I was just hearing stuff because I never hear it say anything about auto land enabled or whatever. I've never heard it say that before, and I'm like, what in the heck just happened here? But obviously we do auto land all the time,
Yeah.
right? We do it all the time, but we're, like you said, technically we're just guessing, and 90% of the time it works. But I think that day I hit it dead on. I guess, I don't know, but
Yep.
anyway,
Yeah.
good times.
Yeah. I think it's above 900 feet. You can put Command B on and you won't have any issues. If you put it on after that, it's probably too late. But yeah, there was some. It's perhaps a scenery thing, but there were some approaches where it just doesn't seem to want to work. And you turn it on, and it always kicks off Command A, and then you turn Command A back on, it kicks off Command B, and it just doesn't want to do it. So yeah, it's sometimes it's not your fault as a pilot if you try and put Command B on and it doesn't work out. Um, it can be
Just
all sorts of
continue
things.
forward, yeah. I
Yeah,
say just
yeah.
continue forward and do your best on your flare. I mean, good way to practice. I
If
love
it kicks it
practicing.
out, yeah, it might do it.
Yeah.
It might kick out the autopilot at like 100 feet, and then you just gotta try and flare. It's probably going to be a firm landing, but you'll be on the runway at least.
There goes a tire flying, but here
Yeah.
we are. We're here. Good stuff.
Yeah, it's very weird. I mean, I was doing a flight the other day with Rob, and he couldn't get Command B to come on this approach into I think it was Seattle, and he just had Command A on, and his plane didn't auto land, like nothing happened. And then I came in right behind him, had the same thing, couldn't get Command B to come on this ILS. I say, okay, well, we'll just carry on. Maybe it's going to do the auto land. My plane 100 feet, autopilot comes out, and I was like, oh my god, I got to rush and try and get ready and flare. I was expecting it was going to auto land. So, even then, both did the same thing, same approach, and different result. It was very weird. So who knows? Sometimes it's just look at the draw. I mean, even your speed can play a big factor. If you're a bit too fast or something, and maybe it doesn't like it, then yeah, it's very
Yeah.
weird.
I mean, I had JFK last night with an autoland. Had autoland, but there was wind. It was like wind was 18 with the wind gusts of 6. So, autoland came on, but I still had a little bit of a rough landing because, and I just want to just, stress this that just because you got autoland does not mean if you land it's not going to be a hard landing, because it can happen if you've got really windy weather. It can still kind of give you I mean, when I say hard, I mean like negative 518, 519. So it was still acceptable, but to me that's hard. That's a hard landing to me. But JFK is a tricky place. You got all the mountains and wind and yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So unless anyone else has anything to add, that's all the questions we got. Does anyone else have anything they want to pop on before we jump out of here?
No, I just want to add that, guys, I'm sorry I showed up a little bit late, but we was having some Wi-Fi problems here and other stuff, but I made it. Either way, I made it, I guess, and that's thanks for bringing me in, Declan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. So, did you have anything, Andy? Or was that it?
So I wanted to remind everyone that
Mm-hmm.
the previews are used at your own risk, and there is no particular time frame that we can set out in stone for when they come out. We will announce them when they do come out, and you can find us at talkingflightmonitor.com. We have the blog, the official download, the preview releases. There's a contact us form that you can fill out. We also have an email address you can use. It's info@talkingflightmonitor.com. info@talkingflightmonitor.com. And we hope to see you on the other side. Don't forget database feature requests. They're hugely important, just like all of the other feature requests.
Mm-hmm. Declan, I want to add real quick, just so people know this, and this is probably even, I'm sure you've said this before. I've gotten a few emails with unknown addresses. So it'd say something like, something at anonymous. I don't open anonymouses. I won't read them. So you make sure when you email us, don't try to email us from a very weird email, because we're probably not going to open it. Like, seriously, we're not going to open it. And I'm sure Declan does the same thing. He's not going to open an email if it's BobbyLou@anonymous.com, because that's telling me that
What?
either I mean, why are you hiding your email address, right? So, yeah, this came in last night, and we got a couple emails that were anonymous, and we're just not going to open them. So I just want to, put that out there to people so they know. Use a good email address, or we might not be able to get back to you.
Yeah, and I almost.
the other thing I wanted to.
Oh, here we go. We've got a few things coming. Here you go. Yeah, go on. That's all right.
So, before we get to the extra questions, I wanted to make mention that over the past preview cycle, we've been getting some emails from people that have been mentioning that they bought certain add-ons or payware aircraft and all this thing, and they then send an email and ask, will TFM support this because I bought these aircraft, I bought these add-ons, and spending considerable amounts of money doing so, just to find out that TFM won't support them or can't support them.
Silly.
Or if they do, support is support is a long time down the road from now. The best thing that we can tell you to do is contact Talking Flight Monitor directly before you buy an aircraft or an add-on. Make sure that we are going to support it, or that we do, because then you're not wasting your money.
Well, either way, I mean, simming's a guessing game when it comes to these add-ons that we buy. Yeah, I'm going to tell you that there's add-ons that I bought that just don't work at all. Non-accessible. There's other add-ons that are perfect. That's just part of simming. Unfortunately, it's that straw we got to draw if we decide, do I want to try that or not? So.
Yeah, I mean, look, guys, it doesn't take a genius to work out that PMDG is pretty much all TFM supports with regard to payware planes. If you look at anyone's videos, anyone's the TFM blog, whatever, it's only PMDG. So any other aircraft you go buy and it's purely for your own purposes, it's not going to work with TFM. You're not going to be able to access any panels or CDUs yet. Of course, this is subject to change, but it will be announced on the relevant places, like here on the podcast. Add-ons, some add-ons, let's say maybe they send things through SimConnect messages, then maybe TFM will read some of the stuff they output. That happens with a lot of ATC add-ons, but a lot of the interfaces are not anything to do with TFM. If you want to buy add-ons, the best thing I can say is to go through something like Just Flight. They tend to be pretty good about giving refunds if you buy something and it turns out not to be accessible. But that's really nothing to do with TFM if something turns out to have a dodgy interface. You can't pull the trick of buying something and then saying, well, I paid for it, so it's you should support it now. That's just trying to guilt people into doing it. That's not going to happen. Just don't spend the money in the first place.
Yeah, and same with Declan. I know that probably even Andy, I've invested a lot, but there's some stuff that I've invested in that didn't work. Did it tick me off? Yeah, but I did not email TFM going, you know what, you owe me.
Yeah. I bought this
Andy, can I add up all them that don't work and maybe get a refund? I can think about 4 or 5 of them.
No. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. It's just common sense, so you guys, like Declan said.
Okay, and we got something about the event, which reminds me. So yeah, TFM's anniversary is coming up, and like last year we did event in conjunction with BVI. So this year it's going to be on Saturday the 13th of August, and it's going to be I think what we're going to do, and I'll put out details closer to the time, it's probably going to be around between 1 and 2 p.m. Eastern start. It's usually about the best time, so that it's kind of early evening in Europe. People can can fly and land, at about 10-11 p.m. here, and then in the US it's not too early that people are going to still be starting their day, but it's good time, and it's going to be from Miami to San Francisco. That was chosen because Miami is the training base, or one of them at least, for BVI, and San Francisco is related to the expos that have gone on and talks, and it's a nice flight that's cross-country sort of thing. It's about 5 hours. We're going to try and contact some ATC divisions, so yeah, if you want to join us, feel free. We'll be on the server. We'll be doing it on VATSIM. You don't have to do it on VATSIM if you're not comfortable. That's fine. You log on as observer if you want and just listen in. You don't have to do it with BVI either. I mean, obviously I would like you to, but if you are not with BVI and you don't want to be, then that's your choice, and you can fly with any airline you want. Just come along as a BVI pilot in general, and enjoy the flight. We're expecting a pretty big turnout, so it could be quite a long one. As we got to get everyone in a nice kind of order and get them off the ground, but yeah, come along on the 13th of August.
Speaking of that, Declan, with the event, we're going to be making a video as well for the anniversary of TFM.
Yeah, I was just going to make mention of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, any of you that are BVI pilots, if you can send us a clip that's maybe 2-3 minutes, nothing super long, to just talk about what TFM's done for you as far as being able to fly. And if you could get that to, you can get to Declan or Andy, or just some way that I can put all that together for the main video. So if you could send that to us, we'd really appreciate it. We need them. We need the reviews, the little clips from you guys. It would help us out a lot. So you could send that to what's a good email address they could send the link for the download? I don't know the best way to get
they
it.
could send it to TFM's email address, info
Yeah.
at talkingflightmonitor.com. Yeah, just send a link to where we can download it, and we'll be good. I'll make sure that Johnny gets them.
Yeah, just send them all there.
Yeah, because there's one website. What's the website that we use sometimes, Declan, we download? It's called...
Well, you can send it via any platform. We use just Beamer, but I wouldn't. You have to keep the browser window open for that to work, so it's probably not going to be the best way.
True.
But put it any kind of drive or something, it's fine. You can even attach it to an email as long as it'll, fit. If it's just an audio file, then it should attach to an email. And if you don't send it to TFM, and then you send it to one of us, then we'll forward it. But the best place, is probably TFM. Send them all to the same inbox, so they don't get lost.
I mean, even Dropbox is free for even if you got a free account.
Google Drive, whatever you use.
There's...
Yep.
Yeah.
But 2 or 3 minutes, you guys, just what TFM's done for you, starting. And I want you to think about what TFM was when you first started and up until now. Now, you might be new and TFM don't really look much different to you, but that's okay too. We'll take all of your...
Yeah, maybe. You might be old and you remember when it was flight following.
Yeah, yep. I remember that. I don't want to admit it.
And if you're new and you don't have much experience beyond what it is right now, 2 or 3 minutes about what attracted you to TFM will work.
Yeah, there you go. You don't got to share your age.
No, you don't.
Declan,
we're not asking you how old you are.
We've been around in here too long.
We're over here, me and Declan are. We've been around for a while.
All right, so we took a bit of a detour there. It turned out we have more to go than I thought we did, but I think that's everything. Keep an eye out on the blogs and whatnot. The place to keep an eye out for the weekly updates. If you're in the WhatsApp groups and the email lists, the BVI email list, then you'll know. And if you're not, that's why the blog exists, so that no matter where you're at, whether you want to be in the groups or you watch so and so's channel, then it's, you just go to the blog and it's right there. And TFM's channel has the in-depth week by week previews, as does BVI pilots or whatever you decide to watch. So yeah, well, who knows when the next podcast will be, but keep an eye out on your favorite channels and whatever, and you'll get wind of change. And like I say, 13th of August, I'm sure there'll be someone streaming it at the very least, so you'll be able to tune in if you aren't flying, which I know there's a lot of people who like to just tune in and they don't actually fly, which is also fine. You can tune in and enjoy that event regardless. So yeah, I think we're about done, guys. Anything else?
Speech mode, Oz 27, Oz 27. Start recording checkbox not checked. No previous
No,
stop streaming
do
checkbox
not have
checked.
anything
Stop streaming.
else.
Other than, we'll, when new things come out, we'll do another podcast.
Ruby 2
I
DW,
think
contact
on the
source
next podcast we do, I'm going to be talking about another weather app, but that'd be coming in the future. So we'll talk about that later on. So.
Yep. And don't
Comma,
forget the blog
133.45.
comes out on Sunday. The
Speech
video
off.
demo of the database feature will be available on Sunday as well. If you don't have the time to go through the 75-minute segment that we did last night, I'll probably have one up probably 15-20 minutes long for Sunday's blog post.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go.
when we do the sneak peeks each week on BVI, you guys, sometimes, the video's longer because we cover every little aspect, every little detail, and then, things happen. Like on the podcast here, we didn't realize we had more to talk about than what we did, but, it's just longer. So you can get it from Andy on a shorter view on his channel, on the TFM channel,
Yeah.
unless you want to watch the whole thing on BVI. So. But thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. Good seeing you guys.
Yeah, nice to be on my podcast. So, like I say, it'll archive on the Blind Flight Simmer channel, and then I need to just edit down the final recording, and then we will have it on the main podcast feed. So, whatever podcatcher you use, or smart speaker or whatever, it'll appear in a few days if you want to listen to it that way. So yeah, thanks very much for the questions and the people watching it live, and hope you enjoyed, I should say, hearing this back if you were listening to the archive. All right, see you next time. Bye.